know how to do that, but actually if we ask that question, does my cement technique make a difference to the outcome of my total knees, the answer is absolutely yes. So that's about it. Thanks very much. That's my lecture. Let's look at our cement technique though, because we all know that we want to get a cement mantle that is robust, and particularly for our higher activity patients is not going to break down and cause aseptic loosening. And so essentially what we want to do in the next 8 minutes is look at our cement technique and make sure we're doing a good job. And if we look at one of the reasons why knees fail early, we can accept that instability and malposition are surgeon errors. But if you look at aseptic loosening there, is 23%, 1 in 4 of our reasons for revision is aseptic loosening, which is cement technique. And so if you look at those obvious surgeon causes and you add aseptic loosening, we actually are responsible for about 41% of early failures. So a cement technique is really important. It's embarrassing when a knee fails before 5 years. That's usually your fault, and it relates to aseptic loosening. And it becomes a very important part of late revisions. Aseptic loosening, 24% of late revisions. So that's why your cement technique is really important. It's not just instability and malalignment, it's your cement technique which is part of a possible early or late failure. So if you look at aseptic loosening there, 23%, and overall early failures and late failures are really important. So that's why cement technique is really important. So aseptic loosening we want to stop. And so if we look at high flexion as well, we're beginning to test our knees in different ways, because this femur is actually being loaded in distraction, which means our cement technique's got to be really good. And so higher levels of function will mean possibly higher levels of loosening, and that can be very apparent in this paper as well. So key is cement technique. When we look how people cement their tibias, and it's tibial loosening that is the main problem. The techniques are very variable, okay? And if you look at this, so this is my colleague cementing a tibia, and you can see his cement is very moist. He's using a spatula to put it in, and he is not cementing the stem. So I call this a thin layer. It's been used like a grout. So what I want to say is this may not be enough under aggressive movement demands, if you like. And if we are going to get a good cement technique, we can actually make the bond between the bone and the metal extremely strong. So a thin layer, a small layer of cement may not be effective under high load conditions. And I'm going to suggest that we use quite a lot of cement under the tibia and we cement the stem. Now it's very different in the hip. In the hip we can actually pressurize the cement and we can limit the cement flow. Underneath the tibia, we cannot do that, and the cement will move away as we pressurize the tibia. But we already know, and this paper is over 20 years old, that a cement technique will make a difference. And this is Merrill Ritter's paper, looking at different ways of cementing the tibia. And you can see very early on, within 3 years of follow-up, that a good cement technique is associated with less radiolucent lines. So the key factors I'm going to talk about are using a lot of cement under the tibia and cementing the stem as well. And let's think about using a technique to stabilize that tibia and getting a good bone metal interface. So we've looked at some of the studies in Southampton using FEA to look at the pressure we can get in cement. Now here is a FEA where we have, this is the cement, we've taken away the bone and we've taken away the implant, and this is us pressing the tibia down and what the pressures we see in the cement. And you can see where we put cement down the stem, we can generate much more pressure than if we just put cement just on the tibia there with no cement down the stem. So if we run that animation, you see as I pressurize the cement, we get high pressures here, much higher than we can if we just cement the tibia on its own. And when you next look at your tibia, look at the underside of the tibia and see if your implant has a little rim round it like this. If we have a little rim round the tibia, we can limit the flow of cement. Look at the cement pockets, because if we have a good cement pocket, then we can make sure that we get high pressures of cement and good cement penetration, unlike if we have a flat expanse on the back of the tibia. So when I talk about a thick layer, I don't want you to leave a thick cement mantle. I'm talking about the amount of cement you have when you start the implantation. So if we have a load of cement here, underneath the tibia as we're putting it in, as we drive the tibia down, that will mean lots of cement penetration into the tibia. If we put cement in the stem as well, that means we'll get cement penetration into the bone itself. If we start with a thin layer of cement with no stem cement, like you saw in the video, if I hit the tibia even really hard, my penetration is going to be very poor indeed, and there will be nothing down the stem. So this means that my cement layer may be compromised. So if we look at this in vivo with pressure receptors underneath the plateau and underneath the tibia, and what I would say is that as you mix your cement, make sure you get your cement onto the metal early. There's some indication that cement can debond if we put it on the metal late. So the first thing you should be doing is putting your wet cement on the back of the femur, on the back of the tibia, to get that cement bond interface. Make sure the bone is prepared appropriately if necessary. And if you look at this video now, you can see what I mean by a thick layer of cement. And so what I would want to do is to start off with a very thick layer of viscous cement on top of the tibia. And you can see that I've got a well-prepared dry tibia here, and then I'm also putting cement right down the stem. Now here you'll see the pressures that I can achieve in the tibia. At the moment it's running along 0 because I haven't started pressurizing the cement yet. But what I'm going to do now is push that down into the stem to make sure that I've got cement down the stem. And I'm using a high viscosity cement that doesn't stick to my glove. So there you can see it. And as I put the tibia in now, we can see the pressures that I will generate. And it's important to get a high pressure, as you can see up here, because I want to drive that cement into the tibia itself. And so as we do that, you can see that we also pressurize through the stem as well. So we're getting a good pressurization. If we look at those graphs, we can look at if we take a thin layer, we get very little cement pressurization. If we start off with a thick layer and put cement down the stem, you see massive pressures and good penetration throughout the setting period of the cement. If we use a low viscosity cement, really rubbish pressures. And so that's a very important, if you like, take-home message, is that we should use a thick layer of cement. We should put cement the stem. We should make sure we use a high viscosity cement, and I will get the cement onto the metal early because that prevents any debonding we might see between the cement and metal. So in your next knee replacement, think about that tibial cement technique. Thank you very much.